Chapter 3. The rise of Israel, from tribes to kingdom. It didn't start with a throne or a temple. It started in the hills, long before the kings and scribes, long before Jerusalem became holy. There were stone houses tucked into the highlands of Canaan scattered, poor and ordinary. These were the roots of Israel. Not yet a people, not yet a nation, just survivors adapting to the collapse of the old world. A boy leads goats along a terraced slope. His mother scrapes grain into a clay pot, while a fire burns low beside the stone wall of their home. No scrolls, no priests, no holy wars, just dirt, rain, kin, and the work of staying alive. From these small lives came something much larger, but it didn't arrive as divine destiny. It took shape slowly through war, memory, fear, and power. This is the real beginning of Israel. Not a chosen people descending on a promised land, but hill people carving a future out of a broken landscape. The first time Israel appears. We start not in the Bible, but on a block of stone from Egypt. The Merneptah stele are carved around 208 BCE, records Pharaoh Merneptah's victories over various peoples in Canaan. Near the end, one line reads, "Israel is laid waste, his seed is no more." It's brief, it's not a story. It's a victory boast, but it's the first known mention of Israel in any historical record. There's no detail, no king, no location, but it tells us that a group called Israel existed in the highlands of Canaan at the end of the 13th century BC. Not myth, not religion, just a carved stone and a name that stuck villages in the hills. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of more than 250 small villages scattered across the hill country of central Canaan, dated from around 1200 to 1000 BC. These weren't cities. They had no palaces, no temples, no central planning, just clusters of four-room houses made of stone with courtyards for animals and tools for farming. Pottery was plain. Storage jars were common. Pig bones are almost entirely absent, suggesting a cultural distinction from the surrounding peoples, long before any written dietary law. This is where early Israel likely began, not in a wave of conquest, but as a slow movement, people retreating from the coast, from collapsed Canaanite city-states, from Egyptian control. These were Canaanites too, but something was changing over time. This population developed new patterns, less hierarchy, more self-reliance, tighter tribal bonds. What began as survival became identity. The Exodus, that wasn't. The Bible says that Israel escaped slavery in Egypt and conquered Canaan in a military campaign led by Joshua. But archaeologically, there is no evidence for a mass exodus. No destruction layer matches the biblical timeline. Cities like Jericho, Ai, and Hazor, the sites of famous biblical battles, were abandoned or lightly inhabited during the supposed conquest period. So what happened? The most widely accepted view among scholars today is this: Israel did not come from outside Canaan. Israel came from within it. The people who became Israel were likely Canaanites. Farmers, laborers, runaway slaves, refugees who moved in the highlands during a time of collapse and instability. Over time, they separated themselves culturally from their former neighbors. This isn't escape by miracle. It's evolution by necessity. Tribes before kings. The earliest version of Israel was a loose network of tribes. No capital, no central power. The tribes were named Judah, Benjamin, Dan, Ephraim, Reuben, and others, but their alliances were temporary and shifting. The book of Judges, though written much later, reflects some of this tribal memory. There's no king. Each tribe acts on its own. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Leaders like Deborah, Gideon, and Jephthah rise for a moment, win a battle, then fade. It's a picture of fragmentation, not unity. But there was still one thing holding them together: pressure. Threat from the sea. By the 12th century BCE, a new force appeared along the coast. The Philistines, possibly descended from Aegean sea peoples, they brought iron weapons, organized armies in urban centers. As they expanded inland, the hill tribes felt the pressure. It wasn't theology that pushed them toward unity. It was survival. To To fight back, the tribes needed something stronger than alliances. They needed a king. Saul, David, Solomon. A nation begins. The first king was Saul. His reign was small, short, and unstable. He died in battle with the Philistines. Then came David, who began as a warlord and eventually captured the hill fortress of Jerusalem. He expanded territory, secured trade routes, and built alliances. After him, Solomon built the temple, raised taxes, and centralized power according to the Bible. His wisdom was unmatched and his kingdom glorious, but archaeology paints a simpler picture. Jerusalem was still a small, modest town, barely a capital by the standards of its neighbors. There was no golden age of empire. There was political growth, yes, but far smaller than later biblical writers claimed. Still, by the time of Solomon, Israel had become something new. It had a name, a center, a king, and a God, building a past to hold the present. With monarchy came the need for more than territory. It needed story. To hold the tribes together, a shared past had to be invented, edited, or elevated. The Exodus became a national myth of freedom. Moses became lawgiver. Covenant replaced clan. The God who once wandered the desert was now installed in a temple. Yahweh didn't just unify belief, he unified power. That's not just theology, that's nation building. The scribes who wrote the early laws and stories weren't just preserving history. They were shaping identity. A single people under one God, ruled from one city. It wasn't all lie, but it wasn't all memory either. Stones over scrolls. What we see in the stones is not divine intervention. We see change. Small homes becoming towns, tribes becoming coalitions, oral stories becoming national tradition, a desert god becoming a royal symbol. This is not myth busting for its own sake. It's recognizing that the Bible preserves a truth, but often rewritten through the lens of later power. The rise of Israel wasn't sudden, and it wasn't pure. It was slow, uneven, and deeply political. First came survival, then came story, then came kings.